What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to go over some of the biggest sales from last week. Some incredible books. Some went high, set new records, some went low. Over $6 million in comics. Let's check these out. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So if you're not familiar, what I'm talking about is the big Heritage Platinum or Signature auction that they had last week. I talked about it some last week, a little bit with a live stream that I did, went over some of the books that were part of this, but all those books have sold now. Just some really cool stuff. Always fun to see this. So I thought what I'd do, because there are hundreds and hundreds of books that sell in this auction, I can't really talk about everything. So I thought I would talk about the first 25 books. So these are the ones that kick off the auction. Not necessarily the biggest ones, but most of the really big ones are as part of this. And so super fun ones to talk about. Now, before we get into these, I've got a new sponsor for the channel, Fanalytics. If you're a follower of my YouTube and Instagram channels, you know that having accurate and comprehensive data to make my comic buying, selling, and investing decisions is extremely important to me. Fanalytics has exciting plans for the future to provide the most accurate and up-to-date sales data, as well as predictive models to help collectors make the best decisions with their hard-earned money. Keep an eye on my YouTube and Instagram channels for more announcements and dedicated content in the future. Fanalytics beta access will kick off in May, so make sure to subscribe to their Instagram for future announcements and click the link in their profile to register for beta access. The link to their Instagram is in the description of this video. All right, we're back. So now let's get into these sales. These are some incredible books. All right, so here we've got the first comic book that sold in the auction. So basically the way these auctions work is usually it's a lot of original art that goes first, followed by the high-end set of comics. So the first block of high-end set of comics is 25 books. And I thought I would go over what I thought the book would sell for, what it sold for, you know, how it performed compared to where I expected to be if it was a new high, that kind of stuff. So the first one here is Action Comics number 7, a white pages copy of 5.0. These are not common books. This is the second cover appearance of Superman. So yeah, he was on Action Comics number 1, did not appear on the cover again until issue number 7. Personally, I felt like this one did not start things off well. This one seemed to go low to me. The high sale, the record for this book is $180,000. I estimated that this one will go for $190,000. Actually went low, went for $156,000. So clearly not a new high, not a record. Went 18% below what I estimated it would sell for. Now this one did go low. Sometimes people catch those deals when it's the first one that comes up. You know, that's why a lot of times you want to watch those auctions when it's early, because you don't have as many eyeballs on it. And maybe somebody just caught a great deal on this one. I mean, second cover appearance of Superman, super early appearance, still 1938. Almost no hero comic books are from 1938. So really rare air when you've got this book here. So I think whoever picked this one up got it for a great deal. Now let's move on to the next one. Next one here was AllStar Comics number 3. This is the first appearance of the Justice Society of America. Went for $33,600. This one actually did stronger, did better than I was expecting. The high sale, the prior record, was $27,011. This one went for $33,600. I estimated it would go for $31,000. So not only did it beat my estimate, it set a new record by 8%. And just a cool cover. You got them all sitting around the table. Me personally, I like AllStar Comics number 4 more, where they're in motion. But I know a lot of people really like this one, where you've got Justice Society of America on the table. You got all those heroes around the table there, and just a really great cover. So big sale for this book. Let's move on to number 3. Amazing Fantasy 15. I talked about this book specifically when I did my live stream. This is obviously the first appearance of Spider-Man, 7.5, really nice grade. This was one where I talked about in that live stream that you could tell, I'm 99% certain that this was a restored book, had the restoration removed. You can see the places where somebody had touched it up with some color touch that were all cleaned up. On the edges there, the top edge, this corner. But overall, a 7.5 is a very nice copy of this book, and this one did not perform well at all. The record sale for a 7.5 was $300,000 during the comic boom. This was $117,000. I mean, just ouch. So now the tough part with this book specifically is I estimated that it would go for 150,000. Went for 117, and I talked about this in the live stream as well. I think what really hurt it were these little, just the white chips on the cover. Most of the time I say, you know, little things like that don't make a difference. It's really the grade that sells the book. But when you're talking about a 6-figure book, I think people tend to start getting a little bit more picky, and that's what happened here. And you know, just there weren't enough people that were interested. If they were buying a 7.5, they wanted something that presented a little more cleanly. You know, you might rather have a little crease down in the corner, this bottom right corner here, than have these obvious chips in the dark brown on the cover. I think that's what really hurt it. And so we end up with $117,000 sale, 22% below my estimate. I think this was actually a very good buy, even though it has that. It's one of those things that maybe it hurt a little in auction, but if somebody tried to, you know, fixed price sell it later on, I think they'd probably do pretty well. So I think this was a very good buy. I mean, Amazing Fantasy 15, I've been talking about it. It's come back down a lot, and I think it's really worth looking at if you've been waiting for that book to get in the price range that you want. Now, obviously, 6 figures is still a ton of money, so lower grades might be the way to go, but I think this was a great deal. All right, let's move on. Next, sticking with Spider-Man, we have Amazing Spider-Man #3, first appearance of Doc Ock. Incredible 9.6 copy of this book. This one was another big underperformer. I had this book going for 80,000. Its record was 144,000. I thought I might even, you know, have been a little bit conservative, thinking it would drop all the way to 80, because this book, Amazing Spider-Man 3, has actually been holding up pretty well compared to the other Spider-Man keys that have corrected quite a bit. But man, this one really came down. I think this wasn't the lowest performer based on my estimate, but this was number 2. And so I estimated 80,000. This was 55,200, 31% below my estimate. Again, I think that this was a good buy. I think whoever picked this one up, congratulations, great purchase. And, you know, just outside of Amazing Fantasy 15, this is probably the favorite book by most Spider-Man collectors, even more than Amazing Spider-Man #1. So I think that was a great buy. All right, now we're going to jump to the golden age with this next book. This is Archie #1. This is not his first appearance. His first appearance is in Pep Comics #22. But this book, the early Archies especially, and this one are extremely difficult to get. They do not come up for sale very often, and this is a very nice copy, a 6.5. I had estimated the price of this book at $62,000. Its high was $62,779. So it went for 6% over my estimate. I mean, that's close enough. I mean, I feel like that's about as accurate as you can get when you're trying to guess the price of a $60,000 or $70,000 book. The interesting thing with this one is that the price of this book has stayed the same for about 10 years. It really doesn't seem to go up or down. It's like, if you just want to put your money somewhere it's going to hold its value, buy an Archie #1. They don't seem to jump. They don't seem to drop. They've been pretty consistent for a long time. But yeah, definitely a tough book, especially in grade. And this was a white pages copy too. So pretty interesting, but yeah, really cool. Archie #1. Now let's move on to the next one. Now we have the first of 2 Batman #1s that were in this first 25 set of books. There are actually 3 Batman #1s that sold in this auction. I talked about this one in the live stream as well. This is an 8.0. It's from this Fantastic collection. I said that I am not a fan of this label. I think it takes away from the book. If I had got this book, if I was someone, I would probably just get it recased and get the regular universal blue label put on it. I honestly was wondering if maybe that label even hurt the value of the book, because I was expecting this book to sell for $1.2 million. Its record was $1,207,500, and this one went for $1,110,000. So the fact that this book in this grade had not sold during the peak comic boom, I think that last sale was in about April of 2021. I really did think that this one was going to go a little bit higher. And so I feel like it's a little bit of a disappointing sale, but within range. I mean, it was 8% below my estimate, but I was expecting this one to do a little bit better. But still, Batman #1, first appearance of the Joker, first appearance of Catwoman. It doesn't get much bigger than this one, as well as just a great cover. Now, we had another copy of Batman #1 that came up for sale immediately after, 1 grade point lower, a lot cheaper. That really is what I expected, though. This is the type of book that you're going to get major jumps as you move up even half points or full points when you get to these higher grades. So this is a 7.0 that sold for $660,000. I had estimated this one would sell for $650,000, so it beat my estimate by $10,000. Not much. Basically, that's as close as you can get. And so it was just 2% above my estimate. Prior record was $334,600. So crushed that prior record, which did happen a little while ago. So not a big surprise that it was a new record, but this one sold right at what I was expecting. So nice sale for this Batman #1 in a 7.0. Now the next book, this is one, I was excited to see this one come up for sale. If you watched my recent video where I did the top 5 comics in my collection, where top 5 key comics, this was the #1. This is what I put for my #1. This is Crime Suspense Stories #22. This is also a Gaines file copy, CGC 9.2, incredible grade. Not actually top of census though. There is a 9.8, a 9, there's a 198, 196, 194, I believe 192, and then it's like 4 9.0s, something like that. And so this one went for $72,000. I had estimated that it would go for $75,000. It has never sold in grade before, but a 9.0 sold for $72,000 not too long ago, but then a 9.4 sold for $90,000. So I thought maybe that 9.0 had overshot a little bit when it sold. And so I expected this one to maybe go for about $75,000. Just a little bit under, missed that mark by 4%. But again, when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, that's about as close as I can hope to get. So it went for right around where I was expecting. Definitely one of those books that's just, it's the book or one of the books for pre-code horror collectors. And I mean, just incredible to see this type of book come up for sale and this type of grade. Now, it does tell you that as these books have jumped in price, we've seen a number of these high-grade copies come out. So the people who own them recognize that, probably had them for much cheaper and decided that they wanted to cash in on that. But then they pass on to a new collector, and who knows when we will actually see these types of grades come up for sale again. All right, the next book. This was the biggest book of the entire auction, biggest sale of the entire auction. This one is Detective Comics #27, the first appearance of Batman. Now, one interesting thing about this one, it also has a little notation here, to my friend Bob Crestol, and this is from Bob Kane. So you can see Bob Kane is the person who did the cover. So we'll assume that this is probably a legitimate autograph. It's just that it was done well before CGC was actually verifying these. But it is notated on there. So that is something that makes this one a little extra special. Now, I got this one almost exactly right. I had estimated that this book would sell for $1.75 million. It sold for $1.74. So that is, again, as close as you can get, within $10,000 on a $1.7 million sale. So it went right where I was expecting. I know there were some people that were thinking it would hit 2 million. I didn't see it happening, but I'd be happy to, be wrong. I'd love to see these books go for that type of money, but 1.75 million and just went right there. And just an incredible copy of Detective Comics #27. I don't see this or Action Comics 1 really come up hardly ever, especially in blue labels. So it's always, it's a treat when you get to see books like that come up for sale. Now, the next book was another Detective Comics. This was the biggest surprise sale of the entire auction, for me at least. Well, would it be probably the entire auction. So this is Detective Comics #33. So Batman covers happened every other cover until issue, I think 35. And so you had the first cover on 27, then 29, 31, and then 33. So this will be the fourth Batman cover. This is from 1939. And this book, I mean, it just went crazy. I was expecting this book to sell for $130,000. Its prior record was $81,000. It sold for $288,000. I think there were probably just two people that kept going back and forth, and somebody wanted this book, and they paid 122% more than I was expecting. You can see, because I have people try to tell me sometimes, they're like, oh, that's the reason this book went low. Minor amount of glue on spine of cover. When you're talking about really rare books, nobody cares about that stuff, clearly, because this book sold for $288,000. If you're wondering how it got a blue label, I know some people are unclear on that. Basically, it means that the glue was not actually doing anything. It's not keeping the cover attached. It's a small amount that's there, but it's not actually serving a functional purpose, so it can still get a blue label. You can also have blue labels with very small amounts of color touch in the Golden Age. You will occasionally see that as well. But yeah, incredible sale. The most surprising high sale that I saw during that entire auction. All right, now let's move on to the next one. This one, this one probably hurt a little bit for whoever bought it the first time, assuming it hadn't changed hands between then. But this is Detective Comics number 114. Great Joker cover. I love this Joker cover. Cool thing about this one is this was a Promise collection, but not just that, it was a double cover. You have the interior cover was a 9.8, the exterior cover was a 9.4. You get the highest grade for those multiple covers. That's how that works. Now, this one sold in the initial Promise collection sale. That's when there was the most hype around those Promise collection books. And so it's risky. I'm not surprised we saw some drops because of that. So this one had peaked. That sale was $156,000. Here it sold for $84,000. I estimated it would sell for $100,000. I figured a drop of a third of the value would be about what I've seen for some Promise books that aren't keys. Now, when they're keys, when they're key issues, I've seen Promise books selling for more. I've seen them go up on the next sale. But the ones where they're, even though it's a Joker cover, a cool Joker cover, it's kind of more of a run filler type book. Those ones I've been seeing drop off more substantially. And so this one here went for $84,000. That is a drop of $72,000 from that initial sale, and even falling below my estimate by 16%. So I'd say this was kind of a disappointing sale, even though it's a really cool Joker cover, 9.8. But you know, it is what it is, and we'll see if it comes up for sale again, if it kind of climbs back up again, or if it levels off around this point. All right, next, another Detective Comics. Now this one actually did a little better than I was expecting. So this also sold in that first Promise collection sale. It was one of the two main books. The two main books were this one and Phantom Lady 17 in a 9.6. They both sold for $456,000 in that first Promise auction. You can see here, this is definitely not $456,000. It sold for $360,000. So the seller lost $100,000 plus fees. I mean, this was probably a little unpleasant for whoever sold this book, but honestly, I'm not surprised by that sale. I actually thought it would sell for $300,000. I thought that this one got so much hype going into that initial Promise auction that I thought it would have a bigger fall. So $360,000 was actually a pretty strong sale in my opinion, 20% above my estimate, even though it dropped from that initial Promise collection sale. But first appearance of the Riddler, even though I actually like his second appearance, the cover of his second appearance 2 issues later in 142 more, still great cover and great first appearance for Batman. All right, now this is another one this is a strong performer. This was Erie Comics number 1. Again, another Promise collection book, 9.2. I believe this is tied for top of census. 3 and 9.2. Yep. So it's tied with top of census. This is, I've talked about this some before. I have a 2.5 personally. This is the first dedicated horror comic. It sold in that initial Promise collection pedigree auction for $90,000. So I thought it would sell for $90,000 again. That was my estimate, just because I've seen this book get stronger over the last year or two. It's been getting bigger and bigger sales, but it was also part of that first really hyped auction, so I thought maybe it would fall off some. Definitely did not. Went for $108,000, jump of 20% over my estimate, jump of 20% from that prior sale, so a new record. So really strong sale, impressive sale for the this key comic for pre-code horror collectors, Erie number 1. All right, so next, this one. This was one of the bigger surprises from this sale for me as well. It's Fantastic Four number 45, first appearance of the Inhumans in a 9.8. I mean, an incredible grade. Went for $45,600. I was expecting this book to sell for $32,000. Its prior record was $35,850, but in other grades, this book has really been falling off. But this set a new record, and a substantial new record. I mean, this beat my estimate by 43%, set a new record by just about $10,000, about 30%. So really big jump, strong performance for this book. And with the Inhumans not really having a lot going on in the public eye right now, I was surprised by this one. This was a really, really strong sale. Now we're sticking with Fantastic Four. There was also a 9.8 of Fantastic Four, number 48, first appearance of Silver Surfer, first cameo appearance of Galactus. And this one, I had estimated the price at $75,000. Its prior record was $108,000. So it beat my estimate by 8%. So I felt like this was a solid sale, a strong sale, but it did drop from that peak during the comic boom. Not a big surprise, but really not falling off that much considering how hot a lot of these Silver Surfer related books have gotten. So I felt like this was a pretty respectable sale. Now, next we've got some DC Silver Age. This is a book you never see in this grade. Whenever I see this book come up for sale, it's always just in terrible condition. This is Flash number 106, the first appearance of Gorilla Grodd. And also I believe it's the first Pied Piper, but Gorilla Grodd, that's the big first appearance in this one. Now, I had estimated that this book would sell for $29,000. This was way better than that, $39,600. So really impressive sale, also from the Bethlehem pedigree. And, just goes to show you there's still strength out there in DC. People believe that they might see something and you can get some big sales in these books. And a 9.4, $39,600, really strong, impressive sale for this one. Now, the next book was actually one of the books I also talked about during the live stream. One of my favorite books from the Golden Age, Marvel Comics, number 1, 7.5, white pages copy. This book, I feel like it doesn't sell for as much as I think it should, based on how its counterparts like Captain America 1, Detective Comics 27, Action Comics 1, Superman 1, compared to how those books sell, I feel like this book always underperforms in comparison. But I talked about this during the live stream. I'm not a huge fan of the cover art, but I really like the color scheme. I like the blue background, the bright oranges and yellows. I think it really pops as a cover. It's a number 1. And so I always really appreciate that. I love the Golden Age number 1s. Now, this one I had estimated would sell for $700,000. Its prior record was $112,000. So it beat its prior record in grade by a mile. I mean, it's been a while since that sold. It's gone up a lot since then, but underperformed just a little bit from what I was expecting. Went about 4% below my estimate, but still not too bad. I'd say this was a very respectable sale, going for around what I expected this one to sell for. Now, the next one, I'd say this was a pretty big surprise. I think for most people. This is Mass Comics number 1, another Promise Collection book. This is one of the more in-demand LB Cole covers. I personally like Mass Comics number 2 more, but I like them both. I wouldn't turn either of them away. But this sold for $144,000. Its prior record during that initial Promise Collection sale was $102,000. So I've seen actually this book seem to fall off a little. So it had that major sale in the Promise Collection, and so it got hot for a little bit and people were buying the lower grade copies, and then those started to drop off in price. So I thought this one might see a drop as well, and it did not. I had estimated $90,000. It just crushed that estimate, going for $144,000, beating my estimate by 60%. And to kind of give you an idea why I've had people say, it's like, oh, it's going into that live sale, it has no chance of hitting those numbers, that kind of thing. I mean, during the live stream, I was saying that these books had a lot of work to do, and so it would be interesting to see how they did. But this book, before it went live, was sitting at $51,000. It tripled during the live sale. So that's what tells you that you can't pay too much attention to what the book is at before the final live bidding happens, because you can see some major, major jumps. So yeah, Mass Comics number 1, classic LB Cole cover, highest on the census, and it's just an 8.5. So that also tells you, with a lot of the other Promise books being in the 9s, I mean, this was an 8.5, top of census, incredibly rare book in any type of reasonable condition like this. All right. Now, this one was probably the second biggest surprise to me in terms of these initial 25 sales. This is More Fun, number 55, the Mile High Pedigree. This is the first appearance of Dr. Fate. This is the single highest graded copy. Now, the funny thing is, it didn't used to be. There were two 9.4s. I think the other one is like a Northford pedigree, something like that. And somebody bought this one as the 9.4 Mile High, I believe about 2 or 3 years ago. I think they bought it on maybe Comic Connect or something like that. And they must have cracked it out. Maybe they pressed it, did some cleaning, or maybe they just submitted it back because it was an old label 9.4. They got the 9.6, which not only gives you the grade bump, but it also makes it the single highest graded copy. Now, I still wasn't sure how this one would perform. I have seen a little bit of underperformance in this book in the lower grades. Now, there is a lot of fandom for the Spectre, for Dr. Fate, but it's a pretty niche crowd, and you've got to have a lot of money to go after these. So it's always the question of if somebody is willing to spend that kind of money on this book. And so I had this one estimated at 160,000, which would have been a record for the book. And the fact that people knew it was the same book, I thought maybe that would hold it back a little bit, but it did not. This one was an interesting to watch book in the live sale. This was sitting at $66,000 before the live bidding started. And when I say 66, I'm saying with the buyer's premium, because the numbers we've got up here are with the buyer's premium. So this book was sitting at 66,000 before the live sale started, finished at 264,000. It quadrupled in that live sale. And so that's another one of those that just tells you until you get to the live sale, those numbers mean nothing. Now, it's possible the book will just stay at the same number. That also happens, but you will often get a lot of bidding in the live sale, and super impressive sale. 264,000, monster sale for this book. It's a new record because it's never sold in this grade before, but a new record for the book as a whole. So really, really impressive sale. All right, next, sticking with DC, we've got Sensation Comics number 1. This is the first dedicated Wonder Woman comic. This is also her first cover appearance. And a lot of people have said that if this was actually the cover to AllStar number 8 or to her first appearance, then her first appearance would be much more in demand, much more valuable. Now, this one, I estimated that this book would sell for just about what it sold for. Its prior record was 12,401, which was quite a while ago. I estimated it would go for 92,000 based on some other sales that have happened for this book in other grades. And so it went for 90,000, basically exactly on estimate, 2% below. So you can call that a rounding error when you're talking about a $90,000 book. So pretty solid sale, impressive sale, especially since we've been seeing a lot of the Wonder Woman books kind of fall off a little bit. So it was nice to see this book get some love, go for $90,000 for a 7.0. All right, next one. This is the one that I personally felt was the best deal of this entire first set of 25 books. This is Superman number 1. It's an 8.0, but it is restored. Now, it's moderate professional. However, at least to me, what it looks like is we've got color touch, tear seals, spine split sealed, and reinforced. All of these, in theory, can be removed. So you could, if you wanted, undo this type of restoration, especially since it's moderate P. So P means professional. So professional restoration should, in theory, be the easiest restoration to undo. As long as they didn't do something like cleaning or replacing staples, then you should be okay to remove this. And this book is an 8.0 right now. Now, moderate means that there is going to be a little bit more that was done to the book. However, I still feel like if all of that was removed, I mean, worst case, I would think you're probably still maybe in the 3s or maybe a 4 for this book. And this book at a 1.8 last sold for $288,000. A 1.5 sold for $192,000. You can't tell me that if that restoration was removed, that this book goes below a 1.5. I'm thinking it wasn't a completely split spine, but even if it was, it would be a 1.5, and you could remove that restoration and you'd still basically have your money. And so I think that this one would likely beat that. And I would not be surprised if maybe the person who bought this, their intention is to have that restoration removed and get it back to a blue label. I don't know. I mean, I figure the people that know these books are very familiar with this specific copy. Maybe they know exactly what was done and what it would look like if that restoration was removed. But still, I mean, if a 1.5 Universal sells for more than what this book sold for, I have to think that it would be a better book than that, given what was on the label. Now, if you were at a 4.0 to a 5.0, those are books that are selling for 500, 600, 700,000. It feels like it'd be worth the risk if you have the money. So that's why I felt like this book was the best buy of that initial set of books that sold. I have such a hard time thinking that this book couldn't do a little better than a 1.5 or a 2. And so I had estimated the value of this book at $300,000, assuming that you could have that restoration removed. Sold for $168,000, 44% below my estimate. It was a record though. So the prior record for this book was $150,000. At least I'm assuming it was the same book. It's hard to tell for sure when you're talking about a restored book, but it looked like something that likely had similar restoration sold for $150,000 a while ago. So I felt like this was a total steal. Even if you didn't have the restoration removed, this book sold for almost the same price as before, and Supermans have really been going up. Superman 1. Now, blue labels are very scarce when you're talking about Superman #1, especially in any type of reasonable condition. So, I mean, it's tough to say for sure. Valuing a restored book is always a little challenging, but when I think the restoration can be removed, that's how I really like to look at that book. And I feel like the restoration could possibly be removed from this book, at least based on the description. All right, now let's go to the next book. This is one that I thought was going to underperform. It actually surprised me. Now, it did drop from its prior record, but it did better than my estimate. So this is Superman #53, 9.4, again, a Promise Collection book. Now, this is one of those that I would put in that run filler category. And so that's why I thought this one would take a fair drop. Now, I also hit it a little bit harder because the other one was a Joker cover, and I thought the Joker cover would maybe do a little bit better than a Superman cover. Now, this one, during that, I don't remember if this was an initial Promise Collection sale, but during its initial sale, it sold for $75,000. I estimated that in this sale, it would sell for $40,000, went for $50,400, so beat my estimate by 26%. So all in all, yes, it was a drop of $25,000, but it still did better than what I was expecting based on what I've seen with some of the other, what I'll call run filler, high grade Golden Age comic books. And so, yeah, dropped about a third, but still felt like a respectable sale for this high grade Superman #53. All right, next one. This one also performed well, even though it has dropped pretty significantly. I felt like this was a pretty strong sale. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, first print, 9.6, first appearance of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder, Splinter, all of that. April O'Neil doesn't make her first appearance until the second issue. Now, this book had peaked at $78,000. Based on other sales that I've seen in this grade and in other grades, I thought this one was going to drop to $45,000. That's where I thought this book would sell, and it actually beat that pretty substantially. It went for $54,000, so beat my estimate by 20%. However, it has dropped $24,000, about 30% from where it had been prior to this sale. Now, we have seen some other copies of this book come up for sale recently, and they've been taking some hits. So this is definitely a book that it had gone up a lot. It had peaked a lot during the comic boom, and it has been falling off. And so it's a book that I'm really interested in. You know, I would love to own a first print copy of this book, but I am continuing to be patient with it and seeing where prices go with it, because it really, really spiked. And we'll see how it does as things move forward. Because I've talked about in the past, I've gotten a little nervous about any book that's above the trend line that had been following prior to the comic boom. And this is one of those books that's still up above that trend line. All right, now 2 books left. Next one here, kind of a significant book right now, and that is Wiz Comics #1. Now it says 2 because there's a different numbering in the interior of the book, but it is actually the first issue. So it's Wiz Comics #1. It's the first appearance of Captain Marvel. They basically had him more or less kind of copy Action Comics #1. It's not exactly, but it's similar enough. That was the goal for this cover to catch those eyes from Action Comics #1. Now, this book had a prior record of $78,000, so it set a new record, $96,000 sale. I actually thought it would do a little worse than that. I thought it would sell for $75,000, just because it seems like that side of the DC universe has fallen apart a little bit. And so I thought maybe it would underperform. Now, granted, there had been some other sales in I think it was maybe a 3.5 or a 4 that went for 120,000. So I thought maybe this one had a chance to do better. So it's a mix. It's a little disappointing, but it also beat my estimates just because I thought maybe it would do a little bit better. But given what's been going on recently with the movies, not a bad sale. Pretty respectable sale. Now, the last one here, the one that they closed out those first 25 books with, was X-Men #3, Pacific Coast Pedigree, 9.8 white pages, first appearance of the Blob, third appearance of the X-Men. This was a strong sale. This book's prior record was $35,505. Its estimate that I had for it was $60,000. So this is a book that, when you look at other grades, it's actually been underperforming. And so to see this one really have a strong sale like that was surprising to me. This was a really solid sale for this book. $75,000, 25% above my estimate. Let's see, there are 6 in a 9.8, none higher. So there are no 9.9s out there, but there are 6 copies in a 9.8. But early X-Men, obviously very rare in grade, and just a really strong sale to close out those first 25 books. So what were the overall results of this sale? It was $6.6 million just in these first 25 books. Just an incredible amount of money. Some really big books, cool books to see sell. Now, there were 15 that beat my estimates out of the 25, 10 that went low. So overall, that's pretty impressive, but 10 books that were maybe a little bit of a deal out there. There were 16 new records. I'll say it's kind of 15 though, because there was one that, while it was a new record, the Crime Suspense Stories 22, it didn't quite meet my estimate. So it's a new record, but it didn't meet my estimate. So it's kind of a weak new record in my opinion. So 16, kind of 15 new records. Now, there were definitely some standouts in this. The big standouts to me were that Detective Comics 33, the Fantastic Four 45, the Mass Comics 1, and the More Fun 55. That Tech Comics 33, just massive new record sale. Fantastic Four 45, just because there hasn't been a lot of interest in those characters, is impressive that one set a new record, had a big sale. The Mass Comics #1, I mean, that was a big Promise Collection book that sold in that first sale, and to have it jump another almost 50% was substantial. That was a really impressive number, just kind of showing the strength in the pre-code horror that I'm always talking about. And then the last one that really stand out was More Fun 55. I mean, that More Fun 55, again, it's a single highest graded copy, but it just kept going. Just the fact that it started that live sale about 4 times lower than it finished, up around $260,000, was impressive. Now, the ones that were the big surprises to me were the Erie Comics #1. I was impressed that beat its prior sale. Again, another big book from one of those early Promise Collection sales. The Wiz Comics #1, that one, it beat my estimate by quite a bit, and I thought it would have taken more of a hit because of the movies. And the Sensation Comics #1, we've been seeing Wonder Woman keys dropping off, and so seeing that Wonder Woman key issue, second appearance, first cover, sell for a pretty big number, was impressive to see. And then, even though the Amazing Fantasy 15 had those flaws on the cover that, detracted from it some, it still surprised me that it went as low as it did. $117,000, when that book, in all honesty, I think should be around $140,000 to $150,000 right now, was a surprise. Now, what were the buys of the day? The buys of the day, Superman #1 was the big one. That one, I feel like if they can get that restoration removed and keep anything above a 2.0, that is a huge win, and you're getting a rare universal copy of that book. That's what I would be going for if I had gotten that one. I mean, I know it's nice to have the really nice presenting copy, but if you can get a universal copy of Superman #1, that's a big deal. Next one was Amazing Spider-Man #3, that first appearance of Doc Ock. I felt like that book just went for a steal. I think it went way too cheap. It's arguably the #1 Spider-Man villain. Maybe you argue for Green Goblin, but especially with Spider-Man #3 being that issue #3, I felt like that one was a steal. And then the last one was actually the first book of the sale, Action Comics #7. I think that was a great buy. Second cover appearance of Superman, a great cover, 1938, extremely early golden age for DC for the superhero era. So I think that was a great buy. Went for around 20% below my estimate. So definitely a book that was impressive, and I think that those three books were my buys of the day. Those really good deals that still happen even when you're talking about major books of this caliber. All right, so that's all the books. Hope you enjoyed this. All right, so hope you enjoyed that. Thought it was fun. Thought there were some really cool books in this one. I always love seeing this kind of stuff sell. I mean, multiple copies of Batman 1, Detective Comics 27, Superman 1, some going for big new highs, some going for, I feel like, some pretty good deals. All right, so if you enjoyed this, you'd like to see more content like this, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.